What's up, guys? It's Nate from Freedom Mango, and we got a van in the shop here, brand new Sprinter Ekko that's going to be getting some power upgrades, and we're going to talk specifically about the second battery upgrade. So let's get right into it. So on the Sprinter Ekko in particular, the biggest limitation as far as getting a charge or a draw is the battery. So the battery BMS can handle up to 200 amps per battery. Otherwise, you're just going to be damaging the internals of the battery, specifically the battery management system. So when you upgrade to a second battery, not only are you doubling the capacity of the batteries so you can boondock for longer, you're also increasing the limit of charge from 200 amps to now 400. So each BMS can handle 200. If you add another one, you've now doubled that. So when you add a second battery, you're no longer limited by the single battery's 200 amp capacity. When we do a stage 2 upgrade, we add the second battery so that we can also increase the charge coming off of the wake speed. So one reason why when a customer asks us if they should go with the single battery generator setup or the 640 with no generator setup, we always recommend that you do one battery and a generator. Reason being, so when a customer's speccing out a Sprinter Ekko power system, you've got two options from the factory. You can get a single 320 with a generator, or you can get a single 640 amp hour battery with no generator. We always recommend that you start with a single battery with a generator setup. Reason being, the generator is crucial. I mean, it is so good to have in case of, you're boondocking and you need that emergency charge. It's really great to have there. Also, you're very limited with power options when you go with a single 640 amp battery. As I had mentioned before, each battery has a BMS built in with a 200 amp limit. If you do a single 640 amp hour battery, that same BMS is limited at 200 amps. So we won't be able to add another breaker, unlock the wake speed, do all that because you're capped at 200 amps. Whereas if you just do the single battery, we can add the other battery and increase the capacity of charge from 200 to 400 amps.
All right, so we're about to get started on install. We went ahead and turned off the battery, got the breaker off, unplugged, come in here, make sure the coach battery's off, come up into this cabinet, and we went ahead and pulled the fuse for the solar. So we know for a fact there's no power. Everything is completely isolated. What I'll do is I'll grab a multimeter and test the bus bars down in the system, make sure that everything is dead, and we'll get started. So we're going to begin deconstruction of the compartment. There's 2 screws on the top and 3 screws on the bottom. Once those are out, the faceplate is moving freely. We'll take the 2 screws out of the 250 amp breaker and push it back. Then we can gently pull the faceplate out of the compartment and lay it down. The wires are fine to support that faceplate, keep it out of the way while you're working. I recommend getting a 2x4 or something non-conductive that you can set the 250 amp breaker on inside the compartment just to keep it supported and out of the way. All right, now we got this compartment all open. Went ahead and tested voltage. I put the negative and the positive there, and we are completely dead. Now we got to make some room over here for our battery. So we're going to do some wire cleanup and get everything ready, make sure everything's flat and out of the way so we can slide our second battery in. Let's do it. All right, so I've gone ahead and laid down the battery tie-down bracket, lined up with a hole that's in the compartment to the right, marking the left hole with a paint marker. I'm going to get in there with a 5/16 drill bit and go ahead and drill down. Get in there with a deburring tool, make sure there's no burrs, the hole is nice and clean. Paint the hole. You'll see in a second I get the vacuum. We're going to vacuum out the compartment, make sure there's no metal shavings, keep it nice and clean, make sure nothing's going to rust. I like to use these little sticky zip tie squares and stick them to the sides to kind of pull the wires away from where the second battery is going to slide in. We can leave these 2 guys here. The lithionics plug and the CAN plug, we can leave them there for now. That's fine. The positive is going to be taken off in a minute, but we really just wanted to get everything out of the way. On some generations, there's a bunch of sealant back there, in which case you'd grab a multi-tool or something, a scraper or something to kind of peel all that up and get that nice and flat. Also, if you look back there, you'll see that there's some grounds. What you got to do is loosen those a little bit and spin them all so that they stay out of the way, and then just retighten it, make sure everything's zip tied and out of the way. We're ready to roll. So for this next part, we're going to be attaching the 2 bolts with the tie down bracket. So you'll take the 2 inner holes, pass your bracket through, like so. And then you're going to use a vise or something like that, something sturdy. Set the bracket down and ensure that the bolt can kind of free hang. And then we're going to take a hammer, we're going to pound it into the bracket to turn that from a circle into a square. So now we've got both sitting in the bracket, like that. Before we slide the other battery in, I went ahead and reconfigured the battery cables on the first battery. So we went ahead and loosened up this positive back here, pulled the boot off, loosened it and turned it, and then tightened it back down, torqued it to spec, popped this back on. It is a little bit tight fitting using all of the same length cables as you're supposed to. So what I do is I found, instead of running the positive this way, like it was before, I run it this way, in between the battery and the wall, down through these holes, and it comes out through here. And then once we add the extra bus bars in, or if you're not doing a stage 2, you can have it reach over to this side of the breaker with just a little bit of bending on the terminal. Nothing bad, nothing too difficult. And then we have our negative here that we're going to run across over here instead of running to the left. And both negatives are going to run together. They're going to come down here into here. And they will just both join together on this middle stud if you're not doing a smart shunt. If you are doing a smart shunt, you're going to want to make sure that you put it on the correct side of the shunt, on the battery side, and then make a new cable from here to go to the bus bar. So to get all these battery cables to fit together without putting too much strain on each other, we're going to loosen those battery terminals and rotate them slightly. Anytime you loosen, install battery cables, you're going to want to make sure that you get in there with a torque wrench afterwards and torque to spec. Torque specs are 108 to 132 inch-pounds. I usually like to be on the safe side of tight and go around 130. But you can see I'm orienting the battery cables now. I'm going to get in there afterwards, snug them down, and then torque with a torque wrench. All right, so we're almost to the spot where we're going to throw in the extra battery. At this point, all that's left is to take these 2 wires out and to push them back or get them out of the way so that they don't get crushed, smashed, pinched, anything. And then we're going to keep all the battery cables out of the way. Now I'm getting ready to prep the second battery for install. So we're going to take this little tie wrap off the positive terminal, get both of our battery boots together, go ahead and slip that onto the positive. We're going to set the terminal down, use the provided hardware. It's just a lock washer and a bolt. I'm going to bolt that positive down. Again, snug it up my hand, and I'm going to grab my torque wrench and I'm going to work it down, torque it to 130 inch-pounds. You can see there's the torque spec there, standard on every Lithionics battery. I'm going to orient that properly, go ahead and torque it down, work that battery boot on there, and it does have a lip on the bottom to lock it in. Very convenient. Want to get that positive on first because that's going to go inside the compartment. If you put the battery in and then decide to put the battery cables on, it can be very difficult to get that positive on in the back, so that's why I do it first before installing. Like I said, I'm going to get my tie down brackets ready, got both my bolts facing down through the bracket. I'm going to slip it on the battery and we're ready to put it in. Last thing, I'm going to grab these 2 cables, pull them off the battery so they don't get smashed or stretched, and just tuck them out of the way. Now we're into install, so you're going to want to take that positive and throw that into one of the holes on the side compartment, feed it through. You're going to want to pick up your battery and set it on the shelf. It is very heavy, so You can either do it by yourself or get a helper. Keep in mind this positive wire can get in the way, so just work it really slowly. Make sure you don't smash it or strain it. You can just tuck it out of the way. And then we're going to slide that battery all the way in there. Make sure none of the wires on the sides are getting in the way. You can either keep the bracket on while you're installing the battery, or you can do what I did here and put it on afterwards. It really does not matter, whatever your preference is. We're going to make sure that all the wires are not binded, and we're going to push it as far back as possible. All right, so we have our second battery physically in its spot. The reason we need to take so much care to push those wires and get those out of the way as much as possible is because of the door latches here. So this upper latch, when it turns on its side, protrudes from the back of the door. So if you're not careful and the battery is not pushed in far enough, that latch will smack the side of the battery and cause some damage, and the door won't close. So if you take care to make sure that this battery is pushed back as far as possible, you won't have any interference with the door latch. It doesn't mess with anything really, but you can see our brackets in place now. Well, this is a little bit different. It's a little odd, but it is the easiest way to get these bolts in here to get this bracket and battery securely tied down. If you go underneath, look up into the compartment, you'll see that little welded nut underneath. And you'll see the hole that we drilled. Just make sure you tighten those two 13 mil nuts. Make sure everything's good to go. Don't want to over tighten or else you'll damage the battery, but you do want to make sure that they are nice and tight. Keep the battery from sliding around. All right, so we have our second battery in the van now. It's strapped down and everything. So just a quick overview. We had to reconfigure some stuff in the compartment, move the wires over to the side, make sure everything was clear, no sealant or anything, made sure the battery was sitting perfectly flat. We pushed the battery back as far in as we can get it to make sure that the latch does not hit it, scratch it, do anything like that. Make sure that the door closes fully. We've got all our wires ran. In this particular case, we're doing a full stage 2 power system, so they have a smart shunt. So instead of stacking both negatives on this negative bus bar here, we actually put it on the shunt first, and then we'll have a wire that goes from there to here. And then if you're not doing a stage 2 upgrade, you would do that like that, and your two positives would stack together, and they would go on this end of the breaker. It's very simple, put everything back together. But again, since we're doing a stage 2, we've got a custom bus bar to make everything look really nice. That's going to work with both 250 amp breakers, and we're going to keep rolling on it. That pretty much wraps up the second battery install on this Sprinter Ekko. If you're looking to get parts for yourself, check us out at vanpartswarehouse.com, or if you want to get your van on the schedule, check us out at freedomvango.com. This has been Nate with Freedom Van Go. Let us help you upgrade your adventure.